call the meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. We have Bob Vicento and Roy Gott, co-chairs for the committee, Sandy Fortin, Mark Perka, Mike Summerer, and Tom Toll for the committee, and guests Addison Gruber, HCPC, and Simon Thorne, Consolidated Communications. Because I want to be respectful of Simon's time with us, I would ask if, without objection, we could move to under information gathering. I listed as student inclusion possibilities. Any objection to that? Okay, so that's what we'll do. So Simon and I just briefly had a discussion last Thursday, I think it was, because I wanted some additional clarity on what it would look like if we tried to include another town such as Steuben on any project that we would be awarded. And it was a good discussion. The landscape looks a little different based on whether or not BEAD funding comes through for the, or when BEAD funding comes through for the area and how that plays out. So I guess, Simon, I'll just let you give an overview of what you and I had discussed and let the committee ask their questions as they arise. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Nice to meet you all. I think maybe I've had conversations with some of you in the past. So as Roy mentioned, we had a bit of a conversation regarding BEAD funds, what that will look like, what it would mean to try to put more communities onto your plan, right? Your idea. And you know, we ended up discussing the fact that that would be quite fine if you want to fund and own the network, right? And right, correct me, right? Keep me honest here, okay? So I think at the end of the day, though, with what's going to happen around us with BEAD funds, it will be a bit of a different landscape. And I say that in the sense that the Maine Connectivity Authority will put together groups of towns, if you will. They're going to try to parcel them together with, you know, some density, if you will, of unserved and no served connection locations, so that they can get ISPs to bid on those locations. So again, I guess I would say if you're looking to own a network, right? If you want to own it, I think you could include, you know, whatever you'd like to include. For BEAD funds specifically, though, it really, you know, I hate to say it's not your decision, but I guess at the end of the day, it will be determined by the Maine Connectivity Authority what those groupings look like. And so I thought it might be kind of, if you will indulge me, I'd just share a map with you to help understand, you know, what I'm talking about when I say no connection and unserved, and you know, so Roy, if you're okay with me doing that.
Sure. Do you have the ability to share right now, or?
No, it's telling me it's disabled.
Okay, so it's been long enough that I haven't had to make people co-host that I don't see co-host anymore. So let's see, advanced sharing. I'm just going to make it all participants.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, yes. Perfect. So what we're looking at here is basically what the Maine Connectivity Authority is going to use to put their mapping together. Okay, I have access to this because we did some grant rounds and I still have access. It will be taken away at some point, I'm sure. Ultimately, what we're looking at is kind of your location, right, where you are within the state of Maine. And you can see, maybe not clearly, but there are two different colored dots there. There's a kind of a bright red and a dark red, if you will. And just to help us understand what that is, The bright red is considered unserved, and the darker red is considered no connection. And for BEAD funds, that's what's eligible for funding, okay? Nothing else is eligible. So you can see that there's a fair amount of locations that would be eligible for funding. What I'm going to do now is turn those off and turn on another layer. And this layer that I'm about to show you is ineligible for funding today, okay? And so basically what we're looking at is another ISP's infrastructure that is saying they can provide 100 over 20 for internet speeds. Now, there may be some discussion as to whether they can, and I'll leave that for a few more minutes. But so if you put the map all together, okay, what the MCA, the Main Connectivity Authority, is going to try to do is take locations that, you know, it's very expensive to build and there's a really long rate of return if, you know, to get a return. They're going to try to put together areas that in a sense will court ISPs to bid on them, right? Because that's really what the BEAD challenge or the BEAD funding is almost a reverse auction. They'll put together those areas. ISPs will take a look at them and say, you know what, that kind of fits where we are. I think we'll try to bid on that. And then as an ISP, you try to capture the best pricing that you can, right? There's a whole scoring rubric. And so I'll just say at the onset, I'm happy to delve deeper into this. I have a little presentation I can give, but for the sake of time, I'm going to keep it relatively high level. So if you have specific questions, please stop me at any time. Okay, stop me at any time. So ultimately, they'll put together those maps. They'll court the ISPs within the state of Maine. It will be basically whoever comes in the cheapest will win, with some caveats to that. Okay, so if there's only one participant in bidding, by default they win, right? If there are two entities that are bidding on this, there is a scoring rubric that they will use, and I can show you that. So I'm just going to go back to the blue dots, if you will. I'm just going to call them blue dots. It makes it easier, mostly for me. There is a process that's coming, a challenge process, and this will open. My understanding now is that they anticipate it to be 2 or 3 weeks away, and folks will have the opportunity to engage in the challenge process via the Main Connectivity Authority's website and show and prove whether they actually do have that level of speed or not. And if they don't, it will be captured, and for all intents purposes, that blue dot would change to a red dot, now eligible for funding. So I would encourage you to let the community know that that's coming. It's a great way to help increase the possibility of somebody bidding. I would say I think that people will bid, right? But I think this is a good way to help the cause. So, you know, to go back to the earlier point, whether you want Steuben involved or not is a mute issue unless you would like to own the network. And I'm happy to have that discussion with you as well. So I'm going to stop there and take questions, or, you know, move in the direction that the committee sees fit to move in.
So I'll just take the opportunity to add and expand on that from our discussion before. Because BEAD is handled at this sort of group level, like we don't know what the grouping of towns will be, so we don't know if Steuben might already be in the area that we would be a part of, or if it would be in a separate part. So it might end up being bid on separately. So if we defer and let BEAD fall the way it will first, we might be taking care of Steuben might be left behind, for example. We don't really have a lot of control over that. If we were to forego BEAD funding and go out and bond for these network builds, Um, then including a town like Steuben, which is essentially completely unserved for the most part, uh, would increase the rate of return and make it more cost effective to go out to bond for funding. Is that I believe is what the discussion amounted to, Simon? Is that accurate?
I think that's fair. The only change that I would make in that would be that Steuben actually stands a better chance of being built than some of the other areas. And I say that because there is no service in there. And the edict with BEAD funds is that they must take care of your red dots before they could fund any blue dots. Right. So for all intents and purposes, I think it's unlikely that Steuben would be left behind. I think that they would be picked up.
Bob, I see you. Are you trying to unmute? No? I mean, I'm gonna just see if maybe that helps. I don't know. Any questions from the community at this committee at this point, Bob?
No, it's just to me it seems like we have a lot of blue dot as we go into Sullivan and Hancock. I'm wondering, is there any plans to expand, say, going towards Ellsworth? Inclusion of those towns.
Another community that I'd asked about was Franklin, because Franklin does have, I mean, the committee hasn't met for a little while. Obviously, I'm on that committee. Um, there is a competing, there's spectrum in Franklin as there is in Sullivan and in Gouldsboro, but there are a lot of areas of Franklin that are also unserved. We've got some red dots up around the top of George's Pond, especially. Uh, I think I'm looking at George's Pond. Maybe not. What am I? Nope, I'm sorry. Yeah. So Franklin has a lot of blue, but there's also some sections that have some red as well. And the advantage that Franklin has, though, is that there is fiber already running right into the central office in the middle of town and up Route 200 towards Eastbrook, because that's where Eastbrook's fiber service comes through. So there might be some efficiencies to be gained on Consolidated's behalf, just as an example. But trying to come at this from a little bit of a provider agnostic level. Ultimately, the discussions sort of came out as it may be worth waiting to make a decision until we know what the lay of the land is once BEAD is a bit more decided. The thing that Simon did mention to me that the communities would need to do, and this plays into the rubric, is that especially if you have competing providers, when the rubric comes into play, there are points for a what did you say, a letter of intent or something, letter of support.
Yeah.
So
I'm showing
go
the
ahead.
scoring rubric there, Roy. I don't want to take your thunder. So if you'd like to
No.
continue, please carry on.
Well, and what Simon said was that in the case that, say there are two providers that might be interested in doing a project in the towns in a particular BEAD map chunk, that the communities could submit letter of support to endorse a preferred provider in that case, and that will go into weighing in this rubric. There's the 8 points for. Is that the local and tribal coordination? Is that the 8
Right.
points? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that it's fair to say that there more than likely will be two providers minimum bidding on most locations in the state. If you think about Spectrum, you know, this is an opportunity for them to expand their network, right? So I think that they will take advantage for what they can, and certainly Consolidated will do the same. We do intend to be very aggressive with the BEAD funds, and you know, going after areas. So I think that, you know, at the end of the day, it may sound funny that, you know, a letter of support could sway the grant application, but it could, right? It really could. 8 points could make the difference, right? We don't really know. We're not really sure how it will truly look when it gets here, but you know, we're gearing up and getting ready.
Any thoughts?
So what you're suggesting, this is Bob, you're suggesting that there be a two provider solution? Yes or no?
I don't think that's the case. I think Simon's just saying that it's likely that there will be at least two providers issuing proposals to take advantage of BEAD funding in most areas.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was directed at me, so I apologize for that. But no, I think that at the end of the day, you'll end up with one of those two providers, right? There may be three, there could be four. I don't know who will participate. There's a lot of requirements involved around participating with BEAD for an ISP, and there is many years of very rigorous reporting to be done for, I think it's 5 years after the completion of the project. So, you know, you could be looking at a 6-year reporting window. So we don't really know who will participate, but you'll only end up with one of those ISPs. They will not split that between ISPs from my understanding today. Everything is subject to change, but that's my understanding today.
So hypothetically, I mean, not that it's likely that Winter Harbor and Gouldsboro would be split apart, but if it were the case that Winter Harbor and Gouldsboro were in two separate chunks of the map and two separate providers happen to win in each respective chunk, then we would probably be looking at different providers, different solutions in those two towns. But that would be the only scenario that would really split them, as if those conditions were met, correct?
Yeah, I believe that to be true. Yeah.
So for me, coming out of that discussion, what was the key question is, do we, obviously, I think we still go to the community, and I think this is good information to bring to the community for our fourth outreach that we were talking about. But I think this is a point where it's probably worth really looking and asking the question, do we wait to see how BEAD plays out? Or is there, in this case, I would want to see, if we want to do this, strong community support for going the bonding route. Now we know what that would look like with Consolidated, because there would be the user fee imposed on subscribers, which would be then Consolidated would guarantee the payback of the bonds on schedule. So it would be a low risk to the towns to take on that bonding, but it's the question of, you know, wait and see how BEAD plays out, or just charge ahead and sort of go it without the BEAD funding, in which case, whatever, I think in the case of Consolidated, we had talked about, there's RDOF money that Consolidated is going to have to put in anyway, so that comes off the overall cost of the build, and then the remainder would then have to be bonded or paid through some other source to be paid back.
So if I may, I think that going the bonding route could be somewhat dangerous, and I'm saying that because if you play the timeline out, you go for the bond, right? It could take up to a year. BEAD funds will be allocated more than likely by the end of this year, if not the first quarter of next year. So in essence, you could be going down a bonding path, and another ISP could have bid and won on your area to build out a network, and now you're going to go head to head with that network. Now, I'm not saying that to scare you. I mean, I think the power is in the community decision, right? But I think you should be aware of that, because from CCI's perspective, that may cause us to slow down wanting to join in a bonding model, right? If another ISP comes in there and they've just been awarded to build out, that's going to be very difficult to overcome. The other comment that I would make is we should know what the maps look like at some point this summer. I think if you really think about that, it almost makes sense to wait for those maps to come out to see what it looks like, right? So that you can understand what the MCA is doing. And then I think it gives a clearer picture of who would bid, who would not bid, in my mind anyways. So I'm just throwing that out there for you to digest. By no means am I telling you what to do. I think it's better for you to make your own decision, but I would just caution on the bond move. I don't think we could go quick enough to prove that a network was going to be there before they allocated the money. It's always a conversation we could have with the MCA, but there are a lot of what ifs, right? What if you can't get the bond? What if? And so we would have to answer that with the MCA, I think, before they were settled on the fact that they would not allow somebody to overbuild us. But things to keep in mind.
Sandy, can we get copies of the maps? Is there a current number of homes in each category for the towns now? I'm guessing the data about the eligible locations is probably available. But I'm not sure that you have it readily right at hand.
No, that
Right.
information won't actually come from us. That will come from the MCA, and I don't think they have that readily available yet.
And
Simon, what's the connection to the FCC map? Because I know there's the ability to do those location challenges now and availability challenges.
Hi, Krista. It's good to see you. I thought I recognized you. Yes, you can go onto the FCC map. Now, I'm going to say this with all the respect I have for the government, federal government, but it is very clunky, and it can be a little difficult to use. But if you had the time, you could pull that data yourself. You could. Krista, if you want to share more than that, I haven't really used it. I found it to be very cumbersome. We have some other things internally that I could use, so I have not really exposed myself to that.
I think one of the most interesting things that some of the community members who are in a similar just kind of waiting place as you all are looking at the current map for is just to find out what does the FCC say about my address, and just get individuals entering in their own addresses. So the map that I just posted in the chat, pasted in the chat, when I looked up my address, I saw that it actually has the green dot, because I do have fiber, was on my neighbor's barn. So it's not, I have the opportunity to challenge that and to say, you got the wrong location. It doesn't matter that much to me, because we got a Connect Main grant a few years ago. I have fiber, but I have used it as a demonstration to show how the FCC is letting individuals right now challenge the data that they currently have, or at least correct the data that they have. So I moved my dot from my neighbor's barn to where it should be on the road, which is my house. And it's just like this little effort. MCA will be able to, if there's a whole bunch of location or availability challenges happening in an area, that will be part of their whole matrix for how they're doing the state-led challenge process and pulling together the state's maps. So this is also relevant in some of the cable territories where if people aren't ever able to get 35 megabits per second upload, which is what the FCC has data from Charter Spectrum telling that, these people have 1,000 over 35. If that's not actually possible when you do speed tests, no matter how you're connected to your internet, then you can challenge the availability data and say, the FCC thinks that I have broadband, but I don't. So I'm going to challenge that and submit some of my own speed tests to prove that. The state will have its own speed test process. So, but you can do it all. You can dive into this map, enter your address, challenge anything that you need to. There's no harm in kind of playing with this map to give you a sense of at least the starting place that everybody is looking at when it comes to federal data on broadband availability.
Any additional thoughts from the committee? Personally, I'm inclined to agree with Simon that as much as we'd like to just charge ahead and get something underway, I think it does make sense to wait at least until we know what these maps are going to look like and see what the areas are, and then we can perhaps strategize that a little bit more. But it doesn't seem like it would behoove us to try to outrun BEAD at this point.
No. I think we need to work closely together though with the with MCA.
Yes.
No question about that. If they have an idea or a direction that they would like participating towns to go in, by all means, we should take their advice.
So I would recommend reaching out to Kendra Jo Grindle with the Maine Connectivity Authority. She is excellent. She has a wealth of knowledge and understanding of the process, and I think she would be happy to meet with you. That's her function within the organization. I would also echo Krista's mention of when the challenge process comes out for the state. All right, I think, and I could be wrong, Krista, but I thought that the federal level challenge had kind of come and gone, and that challenge would have increased the amount of funding that was coming into the state. I think that is over and done with now. Now the challenge process, in my mind, will be at the MCA's level. It will come right from their website. You need to do 3 different speed tests on 3 different days using their website. It gets logged with your information, and that is a valid challenge, right? If you do 1 or 2 days, it doesn't count. It must be 3 days, right? And I would encourage anybody and everybody who can take the time to do that speed challenge. It will make a difference. It will make a difference for your communities.
And I think that's something we can drive home during our outreach event.
Mhm.
And we can have some information for people to be able to do that.
Yep.
Can we expect to have information to share by June town meetings? I mean, like you said, this summer for the maps tentatively, Simon?
I would be very hesitant to give a timeline.
Yeah, well, June
and
seems like it might be early.
It
for
might
that.
be early, and I want to note that this is a process. So the MCA has given documentation to the NTIA. The NTIA now has to review it. Then they go back to the MCA and say, okay, go ahead, you can move ahead, right? So it's not the MCA that's holding up the process. And I wouldn't say necessarily it's the NTIA that's holding up the process. It's just a large, cumbersome process. And you just need to check all the dots, right? Check all the dots or boxes, if you will. So I think if we had that mapping by June, we're doing really, really well. We're doing really well.
But we could at least have the information to be able to be presented. It says, this is what we look at the process being going forward. And of course, we can continue to communicate. We can send out things in the mail that's reasonably affordable to spread that information as that comes out. So
I
Okay.
will also offer up, I'm happy to meet again, you know, as information comes out, I'm happy to meet and talk about it. You don't need to work with us, right? I'm not saying that you do, but I'm happy to give the information because at the end of the day, the information is the power, right? That's the way you stay informed, you understand what's happening around you. And, you know, when you get involved, you know why you're getting involved and what you're trying to accomplish. So I would offer that.
And I do have something that's not germane to this committee's work, but I do have a question for you, Simon. So I'll try and email you after this
Yeah, absolutely.
meeting to get some follow-up on that. Any more questions for Simon?
None here.
So like I said, it's under the heading of, you know, Steuben inclusion possibilities, because again, it really came out of that discussion of, would it be beneficial to include Steuben? And I think it's kind of clear at this point that we won't know how beneficial it could be until we see the way BEAD plays out. And so we'll go from there.
Hmm.
All
Well,
right.
I will remove myself from your meeting. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. At some point, the snow will go away. So there's bright
Yeah.
things on the future.
Great.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Simon.
Take
Mhm.
care.
Goodbye.
All right.
Well, I guess we're
ahead.
gonna be I guess we'll be in a holding pattern then.
To me, my opinion is it makes the most sense
Mhm.
to see how BEAD is going to play out.
Oh,
As
without
much,
question.
I would love to sign an agreement and a proposal and just get right to work building a network. But like you said, if we go that route, we're going to be looking at bonding, and
Mhm.
it may be difficult to go out to bond. It may be counterproductive because somebody may get awarded a BEAD project right under our feet and then make bonding impractical for payback.
Yep.
So is everybody
But
on
yeah,
that
there is
page?
exposure. Oh yeah, there is exposure there. So
Tom? Sandy? Mike?
Yep, need to wait.
Mark?
Yeah, it
Mhm.
makes sense to wait. I mean, it sounds like that's the process, you know, the larger government wheels are churning out basically, you know. Yeah. Seems less risky.
I think if we were at this place a year ago, with Connect the Ready on the horizon, it might have been a different discussion, but we are where we are, so.
yep.
All right,
So that
unless
means
the-
all that RFP process that we have kind of gone through was good information, but wouldn't really necessarily be the direction that we would obviously take.
I'd say depending on how the outcome of BEAD goes, though it sounds like every area that has unserved and no connection addresses will get some funding, and they're trying to, more from that prior discussion, they're basically, Simon said that if Consolidated was going to build for a BEAD project, they wouldn't just build to the unserved and no connection addresses. They would build throughout the entire area. So that being said, he did say, you know, we wouldn't necessarily build if there's two people on the end of a really long road. So I think that's something that we need to keep in mind, because certainly our plan has always been to ensure that every road that has multiple distinct customers on it gets service.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so that's something that's a finer detail, I would say, that we would need to look at in whatever plan gets approved. So We have Krista Thorpe, who has joined us, and since she is directly related to another agenda item here, and I would, unless there's objection, I would like to move to rehoming of Starlink equipment.
This is really just a early stage idea for any committee that is in the waiting game, and just informative, but wanting to hear what your thoughts are, or if there'd be interest in your region on this. After the Blue Hill Peninsula was completely built out with fiber with CCI, a lot of folks who had been early adopters of Starlink because they had no options other than DSL prior to the fiber build out. There were a lot of Starlink customers who wanted to sell or get rid of their equipment, and I don't think that there's been a huge outreach or effort necessarily even to find it all yet. I think some people have hung on to it, even if they are connected to fiber. They just haven't gotten around to rehoming it, or they've just sold it on Facebook Marketplace or other places. But Island Institute, because we have large portions, Peninsula is still in the region that we're working with, Hancock and Waldo County, that still don't have service or are waiting. We've been trying to think of like what's a big organized way to find what Starlink equipment is out there that's no longer needed. Franklin County is another place where a lot of people had started using Starlink, but then they got fiber. And as more of the MCA funded big, funded projects from the last couple of years get built out, I think there'll just be more of this equipment out there. So we, Butler Smythe from the Blue Hill Peninsula connected with Give IT, Get IT. Give It, Get It is a nonprofit based in Waterville that does electronic recycling, and really for the purpose of digital equity and affordable devices for Mainers. And so they have a whole description on the Blue Hill Peninsula Broadband Coalition has a description on their website of how people can donate their equipment to Give IT, Get IT, and then Give IT, Get IT helps make it available to people who don't want to pay the big sticker price for getting Starlink. Especially the setup, buying the equipment right off the bat is a lot, and then it's $100 a month. But if it feels like you want to, in your next outreach, you referenced a fourth outreach, have just some tangible thing that people can look to, like, oh, okay, maybe it is worth me getting Starlink for a little while, and maybe after I'm done with it, it can serve someone else, whether in Maine or beyond. Give It, Get It is actually working with a community in Haiti that hasn't had very good infrastructure since recent hurricanes and or past years. So there's just an effort to try to fill the gaps here in Maine now, but do it in a more affordable way and not have a bunch of people having to buy brand new Starlink equipment. So we're at the very early stages of just wanting to talk with committees about, does this make any sense? Should we make it a bigger, more organized effort? If so, what are your ideas? I have some, but we're talking about this topic next week at, we have monthly meetings of a Hancock Waldo County Regional Digital Inclusion Coalition that anybody is welcome to. I can send the Zoom link for that, but it tends to be a bunch of organizations and some broadband committees as well that have been part of the process of writing our digital equity plan. And funding to subsidize the fee. Good question, Sandy. Not that I know of, but there are some local communities looking at more affordable options. I honestly haven't even looked at the latest from Starlink. Sometimes the companies, once they're going far enough, they're able to offer some discounts from the company side, but not that I'm aware of.
Thoughts, questions?
Great idea. Reuse it, why not?
There are
Yeah.
no,
I'm already thinking of a couple of my neighbors that might be interested.
Yeah.
Krista, is there any obstacle from Starlink's point of view to transfer and put into service equipment that has been previously another customer's?
I just dropped in the link. There are good steps. Give It, Get It has helped outline the steps for how you
Wipe it,
wipe it. Yes,
scrub
I'm
it,
all that.
whatever.
Make it new for someone else.
Okay.
What we have to do before we return our, old devices. So there's 4-step process, and then again, this can we've had this call out for people to send stuff to Give It, Get It, and then they'll make sure that it's all in really good and working condition and ready for a new home, just in case you don't want to just trust the person a few towns over who did these steps that might not have done them totally right. And so that's the benefit of working with this nonprofit. And the folks from that nonprofit will be at our meeting next week, and I think we'll just try to flesh out some more ideas and details for how to be better organized on this, so that people can have internet now. Because for people who are just really struggling with no options other than DSL, that Starlink option has been really helpful, but nobody that I know of feels like it's their permanent solution. They still want to end up with a fiber connection. So
Would Island Institute be assuming this becomes a working program, would you envision Island Institute being the point of contact for it? Or would you say that it would be likely that not Pub Fiber, Give It, Get It would be the point of contact?
I think because of their capacity right now, we can, at least through this December, help out with this. It's related to just our desire to make internet and devices more affordable, and our mandate with MCA. We're one of their digital equity partners, and so currently, this is not gonna. Sorry for being busy in the chat, but this is not gonna come out very clearly. But this is what Butler Smythe from Blue Hill put on their website, and did put my contact, just because for now I at least want to start getting an adequate sense of the need and kind of have a list going. So at this point, yes, I'd welcome that, but I won't be the long-term contact. I think we'll figure out. I think that it would be best if Give It, Get It, had a program directly, but we're trying to provide some capacity, at least for helping get this off the ground, get it organized.
So then my thought process is looking ahead to our upcoming outreach effort. Would it be something you would, even though it's not set in stone at this point, certainly feel free to send information as soon as it becomes more concrete. But it seems like this might be something that'd be worth communicating to people, as we did like the affordable connectivity program before. And for that matter, we could even put a link on our website as well to direct people to contact, at least for the time being, you at the Island Institute, if there's interest.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm again, I'll find out in next week's meeting just where Give It, Get It is. But the benefit of kind of getting that more affordable equipment from them is that they also have a real human on the phone who can help with the setup and everything. They do a lot of just digital literacy support as well. So yeah, a few more details to find out next week in that meeting. But I just the reason I thought of it with you all with this meeting was based on that email that I forwarded from somebody in your community who is really struggling with their internet and just wants to know that there's some hope. And so always great to be able to point them to, yes, you have a very hardworking group of volunteers who also want this to happen. But in the meantime, let's explore what options might be there for you.
Any additional thoughts or questions?
Thanks for sharing that. I think that'll benefit a lot of folks.
well, yeah, I'm hoping we can do a really good harvest of the equipment so that there's the enough for the get it side. You know, you have to get it, give it to have to get it.
Well,
Thank
thank you for joining us, and like I said, keep us up to date on any developments with that potential
Yeah,
program.
likewise, great to hear Simon's update and everything. And I did drop the state-led challenge process module from MCA in the chat, but really frustrating that they are not able to launch the speed test, which is a really important part of that process. They expected to be able to launch that the first week of May, but they have to wait until the federal agency, NTIA, approves the state's BEAD plan before they can actually make the speed test go live. And apparently the window will close on April 10th. I'm hoping that will be extended. So, you know, every one of there's a timeline and milestones section for the BEAD program on MCA's website. And yeah, as Simon mentioned, a lot of just that timeline is not totally in their control or our control. But as soon as that is, I think engaging in that process, and we can circle back. I'm glad to see Addison here. Yeah, we're gonna be learning a lot about this process so that we can be another resource beyond Kendra Jo and Simon and folks, just to help make sure that whatever we can do right now, we're doing. But unfortunately, right now, there's not much we can do because that BEAD proposal hasn't been formally accepted and the speed test isn't live yet. But
Okay.
good news. Anyway, I'll sign off. Thanks. Good to see you all.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. I'm gonna move back to the beginning of the agenda at this point, if it's okay for everybody. With the review and approval of the January 24th, 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second,
Motion and a second to accept the minutes as written. Any discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
We're good. Moving on, update of action steps from prior meeting. Sort of covered a little bit of this already. Further thoughts, suggestions based on RFP interviews. I don't know if anybody's had any additional questions come to mind. I think I had one and then I lost it and didn't write it down. So obviously it was very important.
Well,
Bob?
with everything that's going on, I think the clock has been reset. So.
Yeah.
Everything is contingent upon the BEAD funding.
Mhm.
So I also think that we need to stay very, very close with MCA and possibly have direct dialogue with them.
Yeah, I think, well, and of course, you, Sandy, and Kendra Jo and I were in a meeting not too long ago either. And so we'll just make it a point to keep that channel open. And yeah, as information becomes available, we'll work to make sure that it gets shared with the committee. And that way, as things happen, we can pursue them in an efficient manner.
Agreed.
I do think that the question of a preferred provider is a discussion that we should have, not necessarily, doesn't have to be now, but as Simon said, there's that letter of support. And if we feel that there's a provider that better meets the expectations of the committee and better meets the needs of the communities, that we would want to probably be in a position to be able to get those letters of support done when it comes time to have that So I think we can have that discussion based off of the responses that we got from the RFPs, I believe, as a committee at least.
Yep.
And of course, we know that as far as level of completion, the consolidated proposal was the most complete of the two and met most of the requirements that we set out. So, and not just because it was Simon here talking to us, but in general, I think they demonstrated the most genuine effort in trying to fulfill what we asked. That's my opinion. And they're offering fiber, which is what we wanted. Personally, if we had to make the decision today, I would say for our communities, and I know, Bob, that you said in the email chain that, Winter Harbor may be very well served by just building out Winter Harbor the rest of the way with Spectrum. And I agree that that might be the most expedient way.
Mm-hmm.
But from a point of view of equity, I believe that from the beginning, we've said we're looking for one solution for the entire peninsula. And I believe that, eventually someday we'll hope that Spectrum will continue to make the investments that they say they're going to. But I'd like to not be in a position where we've given one medicine to one patient and different medicine to a different patient and then have to justify our decision later on when one of them becomes inadequate. That's just my personal view. But I think that's something that the committee can have a discussion about. It doesn't have to be today.
Mm-hmm.
But we might want to say, we may want to pick a winner of the two proposals that we've received at a future meeting, just to be able to put that discussion to rest. Does that make sense to people?
Well, I think we need to find out first, are there any closed door, behind the scene discussions with CCI and or Spectrum with MCA? Has there been any dialogue between those two companies and the MCA in terms of what are their plans for divvying up the carving out the territory? Is it going to be is it going to be it's going to be like the Axis powers during World War II, Japan and Germany carving up the world, or what?
Well,
Yeah,
like,
it could be a
like-
duopoly that there's collusion on, from a mapping perspective, they may have somewhat predetermined, right?
Well, I think that's a fair question for Kendra Joe, is if MCA is solely responsible for coming up with the map of parceling out communities.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, personally, I don't have enough experience with MCA to say one way or the other, but I'd like to be able to assume that they're not going to be partisan with any particular provider. So far, they seem to have been pretty provider agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that if we were to ask if improper meetings were happening behind closed doors and we were to ask, I doubt they would feel particularly compelled to answer honestly anyway. We may
Well.
be able to we can ask the question, and as long as, but that's about all we could really do, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to ask the question.
Asking the question does send a signal that outsiders are thinking about this.
Yeah. And to Sandy's question in the chat, letters of support, yes, I do believe this would be something where we would want to get those letters from the select boards this summer. And I think that can be that we've got to do this community outreach meeting that we we've been talking about. B, I think we also need to give the select boards updates on where the status of things are. Um, I don't know, I mean, I've got the town report into Gouldsboro. I've got to send it off to Winter Harbor. I don't know that it's anything that we would want to do during a town meeting. I think because our focus is so specific, it might get either drowned out or be rushed if we were to try and have any sort of a significant presentation discussion at town meeting. I personally, I'd prefer to keep things to our outreach and our mailers and direct meetings with the select board to bring that everybody up to speed. And then certainly once we, again, based on, like I said, the responses to the RFPs, I think we can at least from that perspective, not even necessarily thinking about what MCA is going to look like, who besides Consolidated Spectrum might be bidding on these chunks of territory. I think we can say based on these two, if somebody, if one of these two or both of them are bidding on our region, this would be our recommendation for a letter of support
Mhm.
based on what we've seen already. That's my feeling, that we could make that kind of a recommendation qualified in that way. Does that
Might
make
be fair.
sense?
Why not?
Um, Any other thoughts on RFPs and BEAD? Discussion on outreach. Anybody have a particular preference for where we would have this next session? I would go with either the Gouldsboro Rec Center or Hammond Hall again. I
Mhm.
think both of those are good locations. Peninsula School is great, but I also don't want to be. Schools have a lot of stuff going on, especially depending on what time of year we would choose to do this.
Right.
And we do want it to be soon before the grant expires.
Yes, that is the, gotta bring that up. I would say the rec center.
Rec Center, okay.
Mhm.
There was no, there's no internet there. We did have Wi-Fi at Hammond Hall, but I thought the rec center worked out fine. Certainly it was the best attended.
Mhm.
I think parking is easier there than
Mhm.
Hammond Hall for sure.
Absolutely.
So if that makes sense for people, we can look at doing the rec center again. Sandy would prefer Wi-Fi for Zoom. Well, there is that too. Though we did not have many people try to attend on Zoom, in fairness, as much as I would love to have that option. If I think it does become a question of balancing, because Hammond Hall, you might have to walk a long way from parking. I mean, walk along, probably park at the bank is the worst that you have to do, but still, um, again, we had, what do we have, maybe 2 or 3 people show up on Zoom for that one, I think. And one of them was a consultant. That, we don't have to decide right now. But date, could maybe look towards later April. I know that's bringing us up to the end of the grant, but we'll know what the costs are ahead of time.
Hmm. I think perhaps maybe a mailer, then followed up by,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Well, we'd do a mailer to distribute the information about the outreach meeting in the first place.
hmm,
I understand, Sandy, about it being an accessibility um, consideration to offer Zoom. I think but like I said, given the attendance that we've had, I think we might want to focus more on the accessibility of the people who show up in person, because that number uh, vastly outstripped the online attendance.
I'm sorry, I missed the early part of that consideration. Did we not have coverage at the rec center? Or could we
We-
use a hotspot? I mean, there's a cell tower just right up the street. We could use a
If
hotspot.
if somebody's got a hotspot that they want to use, then we could certainly do that. I don't have a hotspot.
Well, I've got a data package with AT&T that would allow the hotspot.
Okay. So we
Depending
could,
on the timing, I'm gonna be gone for the latter part of April, but depending on the date, that could be one solution.
okay. Yeah, well, scheduling looks like it will be the bear on this one. It's a little too late to begin thinking about the beginning of April. Uh, Why don't we just share dates that do work over email after this meeting? And then we'll just try and pick from there. School vacation, I think, yeah, it's definitely a consideration, and it'll just be a question of when we can fit it in. If it has to be in that time frame, then it will, but especially if we do have a recording, we'll be able to share that on our website through YouTube as well. So people would be able to get some information that way. So let's share dates over email after this meeting, and then we'll come up with a potential schedule, and we can work on a mailer. It doesn't necessarily need to be the same thing we did for our other outreach meetings, but it could
Mhm.
have a little bit more substantive information. But I also wouldn't want to overload it with information and then just confuse people about it. I'd rather be not vague, but enticing people to come to the actual event,
Hmm.
then try to answer their questions
Well,
through the mailer directly.
agreed.
Would it help to have a speaker, Island Institute, or MCA? I guess
I think I'm partial to the MCA.
MCA is certainly going to make more sense
Yeah.
based on their leadership of this process for BEAD. And they would be able to better answer the questions about it than certainly any of us would. So we can certainly try to incorporate, see if if Kendra Joe or somebody else would be able to be there and present. If that is the case, though, we would want to test out our remote accessibility to make sure that that's going to work in that location the way that we hope it would. I know there's a tower nearby. It's just always a matter how well does it work in practice versus in theory. So we could plan.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Alternatively, HCPC collaboration for the comp plan. All right. So Mike, would there be some point we could meet up just in or do you just wanna, you could probably tell yourself how that would work for you up at the vicinity of the rec center?
Yeah, in the next few days as I go by, I'll check signal strength and even do a test Zoom connection from inside the building.
Okay, you have easy access into the building then?
No, but if there's a car there, maybe I can get through the front door.
Okay. If need be, we can always reach out to the town office and maybe they'll just loan us the key to be able to get in and test too. I have it on their committee funds remaining. I don't have the exact number yet. But from MCA, we have somewhere between 0 and I want to say 500 left. That's roughly there. And then we have a few thousand left over, several thousand left over from the other grants that we have. So we're in good shape for right now, and certainly this outreach, the mailer that goes into it and the actual cost of the outreach itself should deplete whatever is left of Get Ready, Connect the
Mhm.
Ready, Get Ready, Connect. One of those, last year's MCA thing. And then, as I said, updates for town reports. It's been submitted to Gouldsboro, and I'm gonna send it off to Winter Harbor as well. The Winter Harbor did not ask for it. They're gonna get it. And Kathy can do with it as Kathy will do.
Yep.
Anybody have any other thoughts?
Nope. I guess we'll do same bat channel, same bat time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Given what we have on the horizon and the work that needs to be done, I think probably our next meeting would conceivably be the outreach meeting itself. So let's confer again after the dates. We can, pick a date and we can get working on that. And probably we wouldn't need to, I would envision not necessarily need to meet again until probably May to
Mhm.
review and see where we are on timelines. We may have more information from MCA to discuss about BEAD at that point,
Yep.
but there's no need to meet just for the sake of meeting if there's nothing that we can do about it.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
All right, so please, everybody, send me dates that work, that you think would work for an outreach towards the end of April as much as possible, and we can get working on that.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Thank
I
you.
propose to adjourn the meeting.
Addison, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to add before we close it up?
Not any specific thoughts, but what are you planning to talk about in your outreach event?
To my mind, I'll just speak to that real quick, that it's where we are, that we've received 2 proposals from these 2 providers, that basically a look forward to BEAD funding and, as seems to be the committee's consensus here, why we are waiting to see how that plays out and and to also get the community's feedback if that is the path, explain the risks associated with trying to plot ahead. Bond funding, though it might be relatively low risk to the communities to take out a bond if there's a guarantee that the provider who builds it will pay it back. Then BEAD funding does make it less likely, like Simon said, that a provider might want to go that route in the first place. So basically bringing them up to date on that discussion and seeing if there's any I think it'd be worth seeing if there are any preferences going forward based on the information that we are able to provide.
All right, thanks for that.
Does that make sense to people?
Hmm?
Okay. Doesn't have to be the broadband 101 that we did last year. We got,
No,
I'm tired of giving that speech. So, okay. Well then, Bob has made a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? I'll take that from Sandy. All those in favor?
aye,
Thank you all for being here.
thank you.
Thank you.
Care.